start the strategic initiative workshop. Welcome everybody. Scott, if you want to take it away and lead us in this, go ahead. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight we're going to have the strategic initiatives workshop, build on some of the work the council has done previous to tonight. We'll work through what the recommendations are towards the end of the evening, but we'll leave plenty of time for you to have discussion about what you'd like to have for next steps. So we'll run through the assumptions. We'll do a little bit of reflection on the last couple year initiatives. Talk about the areas of interest the council identified at the retreat, identify kind of what those council priorities were as we understood them. Talk about the recommended 25 to 27 strategic initiatives, and then talk about how we get those implemented. So the importance of strategic initiatives is it's part of our ensuring alignment, accountability, and momentum towards long-term community impact. So we're looking for things that are going to be true to the mission, vision, and values of the organization, and certainly is a scorecard. This is not meant to be aspirational or stretch. These are meant to be an identification of the priorities of the community via the council about things that you expect us to get accomplished. We're going to talk a little bit about the April council retreat and how that built here. The council had the opportunity to reassess shared values there, assess progress, and identify the top priorities. And then you asked staff, namely the city administrator, to kind of use that information to put together something that you'd have to work with. We want to take a little bit of time, as we talked about in those strategic initiatives, reflection, to talk about how we've been able to accomplish things, and also learn from anything that we may not have been able to identify. On the assumptions, we're talking about kind of the why of importance of strategic initiatives. And these are 4 areas that I think people can think about when they're trying to understand what's the purpose of this. So for one, it helps the council translate their broad vision and provide some clear priorities to staff in how decision-making and resource allocation is going to occur over the next couple years towards our bigger goals. It's got some measurable goals to allow the council and the community to understand what we're working on and whether or not we achieved it. It aligns and integrates all of the different working plans that the council and the community have approved, boards, committees, and commissions. So it's taking a look at all the things that are outlined for us to accomplish next, and trying to get focus on, okay, what are we going to do first? And then if you have a defined set of strategic initiatives, I think it can help provide resilience to the organization, meaning it's something that we keep driving for. We know that we're in the midst of constant change in the world. Things are changing around us rapidly, but we have to have resilience towards these goals, even with the flexibility that's required kind of to emerging trends or other things. We still want to remain focused on what are we going to get accomplished. So most of the assumptions are built off of the April 2025 council retreat. You kind of created the blueprint. One of the things you did is, as a council, has said the city's mission, vision, and values continue to be aligned with what the council thinks is a reflection of our work, and so we use that to guide what we're doing. In other words, we're not going to spend time modifying, changing, or working on mission, vision, values. We're going to focus on the next step, which is the actual projects that can put that into work. I was happy to see that it was a productive discussions. I think the council feedback from that, the evaluation of that retreat, is that you thought it was productive and you had a chance to talk amongst your peers and forward things that were important for the upcoming couple of years. We also, if you remember, did a little bit of team building, which I think is helpful, and continue to build on the civility, professionalism, and productivity of the council in making sure that you can let us know what we need to do in a very clear way. And then finally, we did some long-term aspiration. So we did work on some of that aspirational stuff, which allowed us to kind of understand the framework of what we're working in. Is we're going to try to get to the aspirational. What is it that we're going to work on now to carry out those work plans? Let's see, I miss. Nope, that's the next one. So 2023-25 strategic initiatives. There's as much science or as much art as there is science in developing a framework or time frame. The council's used to seeing these kind of being a July 1 to June 30th of the following year. So it's a 2-year, 24-month kind of period. There's some overlap in these projects, but we're essentially trying to bite off chunks that are in 2-year periods to try to get those accomplished. So here's our scorecard from the current or the past 2023 to 25 strategic initiatives. I'm not going to run through each one of those, but I will note where there's a check mark, we believe that initiative is completed. Certainly the council's job is to tell us if they don't think that we accomplished what you set out to do in those. We think we've performed, and you've seen the results of that. There's a couple that are in progress, which means we didn't quite get them done by June 30th of this year. And then there is one that we are saying it didn't become a strategic initiative. We had some difficulty in getting a partner on a project, and we can only do one half of a cooperative boundary agreement. So Town of Clifton kind of gave us as polite of a no thank you letter as I've seen in a while, and so we'll worry about that at a future date. Is there any questions about these initiatives or any feedback on whether you were surprised to see a check mark next to something that you don't expect to see a check mark next to?
To go back and replace Clifton with the town of River.
That'll be something we'll discuss tonight. I give you a preview that is not something we've recommended to be in the list, but it's something the council can discuss whether you'd like us to add.
Nope. Want me to re-ask the question? Yeah. The question I had was, could we replace Clifton with the town of River Falls? And it sounds like it's something we'll discuss here in a minute.
Yep, certainly. Anything else you'd like me to pause on for this, or we want to get? Okay. No, I think it should be stated that we probably could spend a lot more time celebrating all the things we accomplished, but you know that that's not my style. So we're moving along, but this is an incredible list of accomplishments. I mean, that is a lot. That is no ordinary list of strategic initiatives. And as you'll see, we've set up another one coming. So this is what we heard in the retreat in April. What are some of the priorities? And do your best to get all of those included in the next strategic initiative list. And if you remember, we kind of did an exercise to try to get down to 7. So I'm going to run through the different strategic initiatives. They're not all on one list here. I'm going through each of the aspects of our strategic plan. First being connected community. So there's 3 projects that are recommended going forward under the connected community. So that's Kinnickinnick River Corridor planning phase 1. That's completing the feasibility study and initiating the project design. So that's us getting past kind of the is it possible and what might it look like to verifying that it is possible. Not only is it possible, but it's feasible, and then getting into the practical design. So that'll involve the council making an action about going forward with the actual project design at some point. We've already authorized the feasibility study portion of that. So I would say that's an in progress project for us. We can stop at any point if the council chooses to do that, but obviously you've set up some resolutions and other things that would tell me that's not what you're looking for us to do. And that's just a good segue or a reminder that the council can direct that we not work on any of these things. In fact, you are in sometimes the best position to say as a group, not individually, but as a group, that's just not a priority right now. Yes, it might be something you want to do, but given the list, you think we shouldn't be spending time. Certainly, none of these should be a surprise to you because of all the lead up to it. But if you were, it'd also be something as a group you could say, we've never talked about that. I don't know why that's on there. We don't want to spend time on it. I don't think this is pretty anticlimactic as far as that goes. So don't expect you're shocked or awed by any project. Safe Streets Action Plan would be to finalize that plan. And that also includes implementing strategies in coordination with available federal funding opportunities. In other words, trying to get as much road money as possible to implement those things. Glen Park Phase 2, excited to include that as a project and try to get moving on. We think in the coming months, we're going to be able to present to the Park and Rec Advisory Committee and to the City Council a plan to utilize existing impact fees and potentially some fund balance to make significant strides towards completing Phase 2 improvements that were identified in the Glen Park Master Plan. If it's okay with the council, I'll run through them all, then I'll come back to this slide and you can ask specific questions if you have any confusion about what these projects are. Economic vitality is next. The council has indicated downtown master plan. We'd continue working on downtown survey work. And then we continue to pursue the federal funding opportunities that would help provide needed money for what is likely an up to $30 million or more project. Continued infill in corporate park. So we know that it's a strategic initiative to keep working aggressively to market and promote development opportunities on our available site within the existing corporate parks. What we heard in the retreat is that even though the council, and there is some council members that do think that that is one of our main priorities, is to go find another corporate park. The emphasis or the priority, if given limited resources and time, was to focus on our existing corporate parks and the infill opportunities that exist there. So that's included. Innovation Center expansion is one that we've talked about for a number of meetings, and might be, of any of the ones, might be the most surprising to council to see on the actual 25-27. And that's because we just received communication this week that we're likely to receive $2.2 million from the Economic Development Administration, Department of Commerce. So that is one the council could say we're not ready for, we don't want to spend time on, but certainly we think we've got an opportunity in front of us that's pretty substantial. Financial sustainability. We've chosen not to include the budget and the fiscal plan as a separate strategic initiative, although we are going to continue to do those things. But we've reached the point, frankly, where they're kind of routine part of our overall work plan. So the one thing that we're kind of drawing attention to under financial sustainability is after about 20 plus years of the existing impact fees, reviewing them and trying to find out if they match, and then offering the council the ability to make any policy decisions about what we want to do with those impact fees. And then the last category is quality municipal services. And as you see, there's a lot of infrastructure investment, including 2 buildings, a radio system, and then continuing to look at our water, sewer, electric, and other infrastructure opportunities that present themselves to the community, and how we deliver those services to the public. So fire station remodel, the library remodel, and the capital campaign that goes with that, plus public safety communications upgrade, which we have pursued federal funding for. So that's the 4 aspects. It's kind of a choose your own adventure, Mayor. I can go to what's not what just missed the cut, or we can go back and review what did make the cut. If
Did anybody have any questions about what we watched, seen so far?
I do have one question, and it stems from kind of a broader point, but in the downtown plan, there's an opportunity for doing some dark sky legislation if we were to potentially dovetail that with our Safe Street Action Plan. And I just want the staff to take a look at doing dark sky legislation, which would reduce light pollution. It does save money if you do it correctly, but it improves our environment. It reduces light pollution, which is good for our mental health. So there's an opportunity within some of these plans to do some of these actions that we can agree on. And that's one area I think we could. There are other times we can do that too with new subdivisions as well as in parks, but those are different pieces that the staff might want to take a look at and review separately. So with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so I understand the interest in doing that. I think I would consider on behalf of staff that if we were gonna do some probably significant work on involving dark sky in our subdivision ordinances or downtown master planning beyond like design elements, that would be something we would think about identifying as a separate strategic initiative, of which I don't think we have room to add, but that'd be up to the council. We certainly are going to continue to look at lighting as an element of the design, but if we truly want to go after dark, what would be more of a dark sky approach to all the things we're doing, I would likely identify that as a separate project. So that's maybe a segue then to what missed. You know, what did we've heard from you that it's important, and why aren't we working on it? But given the aggressive nature of our strategic initiative plan already, I just don't recommend that we add these in at this time, because I think we're going to dilute our ability to provide quality performance on those others. And these are hard for staff also. I think you all know that a lot of times they're harder for staff to take off the list than they are for council, but these are all good things and all things that really need some work and pretty significant work. So Hoffman Park Master Plan review and update. We've got a lot of changes. We just received a new stormwater report, so we kind of understand better what that looks like. DeSanctis Park Master Plan, we know that there's a lot of interest as we move and develop west and trying to figure out what that park looks like. Feasibility for added corporate park sites, we've heard that loud and clear from members of the council that we really ought to be getting out there, but frankly that we'll always keep our eyes open for opportunities, but if we're actually going to focus on a feasibility, that's essentially a separate strategic initiative, which I'm not sure how we get done given the other workload. We also heard at the strategic retreat that future corporate park would be ahead of a future fourth regional park that was identified in the comprehensive plan, that you'd want us to go find additional land and feasibility for corporate park sites over finding a fourth regional park. If you recall, we specifically talked as a group, and the council feedback that I heard was the Kinney Corridor in essence is becoming the fourth regional park. It's a lineal park, and it would be fitting what the council thinks is necessary at this point. If anything, the concept of a fourth regional park that was identified in the comp plan might actually be the fifth regional park if you look at kind of a lineal downtown Kinney Corridor park. So you don't have to accept that premise. I'm just reminding the council that that's kind of what we talked about. And I even heard in the retreat that it was hard for the council to get it up there ahead of spending time on Hoffman, DeSanctis, or the corporate park. So these aren't necessarily listed in order that I think you have them, but they kind of are. And then we've talked about, do we take the next step on a comprehensive housing strategy? So currently we have a vision, we have information with our housing assessments, we have some practices, but we don't necessarily have a comprehensive housing strategy. It's certainly not in writing. We have some strategies listed in our comp plan. We have strategies related to our TID policies. So we have some strategies, but they're not all put in one place. And again, that's that's a strategic initiative in our mind because it's multidiscipline, multi-departmental, multi-year to get that put together. So those are the 5 that I identified as kind of just missing the cut. There's other things obviously that were not in this list, but these are the ones that I think what I heard from the council, they just missed. And I just couldn't figure out how to slide the pieces in to get these in. If the council felt really strongly about sliding a piece out somewhere in the current plan, then I could give you advice, professional advice about whether or not that was enough to slide one of these others in. Because they're different amounts of effort and scope for each of those. So we also took out, if you notice, we took out the National Citizen Survey, National Community Survey as a strategic initiative. There again, we're not going to, let me talk in the positive, we are going to continue to do that every other year. Again, we've just kind of institutionalized that now, and it doesn't seem like a separate strategic initiative like the budget, right? We do the budget every 2 years. We understand that. These are kind of the special or extra initiatives that we put focus on. So what we need from the council is you to review the recommended initiatives, provide any feedback. And then we would bring these back to the council August 26th using any feedback and or direction you provide tonight. And then we would want adoption of the strategic initiatives August 26th council meeting if you're ready to do so at that time. And then you'd be able to provide some clear direction about what we are focusing on, because if we have a lot of priorities, then we have no priorities. So we have to figure out what exactly we can bite off. And I certainly would welcome to understand if there's anything on the plan that you think we should delay. We like to get things done, so we're happy to be aggressive, but understand that I think that's where we're at. So I can slide back. I don't have a slide, and that's because I asked Jason to take it out, so that's my fault. Where you see all of the strategic initiatives on one page, but I'll just quickly go through them again. Kenny River Corridor, Safe Streets, Glen Park Phase 2. And Glen Park Phase 2 is construction. It's not planning, it's doing projects that are already identified in Phase 2, even if it may not include all of the projects in Phase 2. So if you recall, it's finishing the playground, it's path work, there's gazebos, lookouts, there's changing to configuration of the existing playgrounds, sport court possibility, new east bathroom, potentially new open shelters. So there's a number of elements. I don't think we'll be able to afford them all, but we're going to make significant progress based on, that's what we're going to recommend. Council can say, you want to put the money somewhere else, or that's not your priority, but we heard that's priority for parks. Downtown master plan, that's continuing to kind of figure out what we're doing. This is not 12 charrettes. This is not doing massive Keeney corridor-like engagement. This is just keeping the momentum going forward on the downtown plan, continuing to gather information, continuing to work. But it is this would be what I would consider a staff-led process. Continue the infill, that just means we're gonna continue to take a little of everybody's time plus most of Carrie and other people's time in trying to fill out what we've got. So actively marketing that. And then that innovation center expansion is the phase 2 of that original project. So we already have the site, we already know what the building looks like. We just needed a way to finance it, and the EDA funding is 50-50. We expect that funding to be secured by the EDC, but we are very involved as a city in getting that project done. So even though it's not our money, it'll be federal and EDC money, which is a separate 503C or 501c6 corporation. I'm the executive director, Carrie's the treasurer. We're gonna spend a lot of time doing that, and it won't happen without city staff involvement. The impact fee review, which is likely to be a consultant review, given our workflow, but obviously staff is really involved in connecting the policy piece to the council. And then fire station, library, radio system, and continuing to just figure out what the future of the utilities look like. Primarily wastewater and water, some electric, and then potentially other utilities in addition to that. These are what didn't make the cut. So I'm happy to sit down. I'll take the keyboard with me so that I can go back to slides if you want, and then I'd welcome Mayor, the council to just have a discussion and let us know if we're on the right track, if we need to adjust, or where you want to go from here.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or about what he has, what staff has listed of what they think we told them to do?
I got a couple clarifying questions, if
Yeah,
we could.
yeah.
If I look at, you said the Innovation Center was a 50-50, so we gotta put in 2.2?
Yeah, the funding is 50-50, so the expectation is that the River Falls Economic Development Corporation would need to fund that.
Okay.
So the mortgage wouldn't be a city mortgage.
Okay.
Unless the council, I mean, that's the assumption we're operating under. The council hasn't told us they're interested in doing the project with levy or with TID money.
No, I'm not advocating
And
either
the
one, I'm just
EDC
clarifying.
and the EDC asked us to apply knowing that we're basically a pass-through. So
Okay.
the money, the money is gonna come through the city, but it goes to the building. And we don't retain ownership, but we also don't have any fiscal obligation other than the time and effort that you have staff spending on it.
Okay. On the exam and impact fees, it sounds like we're gonna have to do some consulting work on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance we can do it internally, but I think we would want to kind of, that's a project that likely can be set off to a consultant where they can actually do most of the work and take the relief off of staff, and then we're basically can interface on your behalf as the council to say,
Yeah.
nice try, that draft doesn't look exactly like what the council's questions are gonna have, and then kind of get them prepped to bring it to you to say, is this what you're thinking? Basically, the council's gonna have to agree to the assumptions for design, right?
Okay.
How aggressive do you want to be in cost recovery on new development? When they were done in 2001, how I read the report is the council wanted development to pay 100% of all of its cost and no impact on new on the existing residential, and so that there was a attempt in the impact fee design to do that. Now it's been a long time since we updated the numbers, so I think that'll be a question of how far to go.
And I don't want to jump out too far in front of the study, but can you clarify? I remember the impact fees, if I remember right, they needed to be spent within the first 7 years. They had to be spent.
I won't be able to clarify exactly, only to tell you that the legislature's changed the law in my career like 5 times.
Okay, okay,
But generally speaking, there's a window. Generally speaking, it's 7 years.
okay, that's what I thought.
Otherwise, it needs to go back to the
those who paid,
developer.
yeah.
Yep. So,
But I would imagine the report will handle that.
yeah, and I'm not worried about the FIFO and LIFO and all the accounting part of our impact fees. I think we're in very good shape on that, but it's more a matter of what are the projects that we're gonna identify
Yep.
that need to be paid for by impact fees, and then what percentage of recovery do you wanna try to attempt, and then what impacts might that have on housing? I don't think they likely have a big impact on commercial, industrial, or institutional development, but they can have an impact on residential. And then there's policy choices you'd make along the way, because I believe our current impact fees essentially give some benefit to multifamily, meaning it isn't one REU you know, so it's a 50-unit building and isn't necessarily 50 times the single family impact fee. I should probably turn around and see if anybody, okay, good. We're getting
I think
nods.
that'll come in the
But,
study.
but that's the kind of policy decision the council has to make along the way, like,
Yep.
is it just, this is how much it is for every residential unit, and if you build a 50-unit apartment building, you pay 50 times that? Or in our, like our current says, well, there's not really that as much of an impact because it's land-based and you're not taking up as much land and all that stuff, so you'll get to make those decisions. And you also can make the decision you don't wanna have impact fees. But there's policy implications to that too. So we're not, I'm not making a lot of assumptions going into the impact fees, other than it's 20, if they're 2001, are they 2001? Does that sound about right? So they're 25 years old.
Yeah.
So it's probably time to look at that.
And then a last comment, more than a question, but as I look at the recommended, the ones that we missed or that didn't make the cut, I feel strongly that the corporate park sites, not that I don't think that the parks are important, I think they are. Hoffman has already got a plan. Do we have to revise it? Yes. DeSanctis is sort of a passive park. But I think the corporate park site has to be a number one priority, given the time it takes to get a corporate park online. I mean, Man Valley, we bought that land in 2010. Now, understandably, we didn't do much with it for a while. But by the time we get a plan for it and do the layout and put the infrastructure in and get it ready to get it shovel ready, it's a good 5 years at least. I think that's gotta be a number one priority, and obviously number two would be the housing strategy. But those are just my comments for my fellow council members.
I do have another question that dovetails with that regarding the comprehensive housing strategy. Like, I've requested for accessory dwelling units and other items to be part of a plan, and from my understanding, the staff are reviewing them. Is that part of why it didn't make the list, because we're still in the review process?
It didn't make the list because of what it requires an effort. You will see piecemeal some elements of, and all of these things as we go forwards, right? We never kind of lose sight on things we still think will be in the future, but you may only see a standalone ADU recommendation. And then, of course, you won't necessarily be able to consider that in an overall housing strategy. You'll kind of be doing something and hoping it has the impact you want. And that doesn't mean you'll have bad impact. It just means there's something different about a comprehensive housing strategy. Like, that means we pull in all of our stuff and try to figure out exactly what we're doing on every aspect of housing, or at least the primary 7 or 10 or whatever number of aspects we figure out. I just want to recognize that we're going to keep making progress. We still have our vision. We still have elements in the comp plan. We still have our zoning ordinances and other things that give us a framework for housing. But we're not kind of like tossing it all upside down and shaking it up and seeing how it goes, which is what, frankly, a comprehensive housing strategy would do. One of the other things that missed the cut, but I didn't put on the list, and I'm not really sure where we're at with, is the whole discussion about like community development authority and trying to figure out if we should have a more active role in housing, or a different role or a different situation, because we know there's succession planning going on in the housing authority, and there's some timing windows where we might want to think about that. But again, doesn't mean we won't do a little research, doesn't mean we won't continue to have good conversations with the housing authority, but it doesn't get to that, like, we gotta do this, let's all stop and take a look at it, because I just don't see how we can get the time to do it. It doesn't mean there might be no changes to our relationship with the housing authority. It just means that it's probably not gonna be in the context of some big study, plan, strategy, development. And we have to be flexible. I mean, you've seen before, we kind of get walloped sometimes lately it's been mostly good opportunities, but sometimes you just can't, you don't necessarily predict what's going to happen positive. And then we may come back to you as a council and ask you to see if we can shuffle a little bit or turn it around, but this is gonna be tight. Like trying to perform on these things, if we get some other really fantastic opportunity, we will really have to make a decision like take a timeout on downtown or take a timeout on utilities or take a timeout. You'll have to figure out a way to take a timeout because I just don't see the capacity for us to get it done.
I don't think that's a problem.
I'd like to elaborate on what Mr. Morse had to say about the corporate parks site or looking forward. I really think we need to, not just a corporate park, but all our things. We need to do infills, whether it's sidewalks or it's the industrial parks that we already have now. I think those need to be filled before we really give too much consideration to, unless something comes right out of the sky and it's just a beautiful opportunity. I don't think it's really worth the effort of pursuing at this point until we fill in the gaps that we have. So, and again, that goes back to, we have plenty of empty sites right now with all our industrial parks going back to the original one on, Troy and Croy or whatever it is. And sidewalks and building sites and that. So I hope that we would fill in those gaps and continue to do what it's made River Falls great. It's curb and gutter, it's green space, and hopefully we keep a vision of who we are, what we were, and what we still can be.
I just,
Well,
I just have a comment, kind of looking at this from, I know, 20,000-foot level. This is significant infrastructure. And I look at this stuff and think that, if we can do this, it's, the council 10 years from now is gonna say, oh gosh, I'm really glad we did that. Yeah, because this is the right time to start with the downtown master plan. The Kinney River corridor finally is like, you can kind of see it at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, so if we can do these things, it's going to be just significant for the city moving forward. I mean, fire station, library, utility plans. There's a lot. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know how much to elaborate or not because you guys are so pros, but maybe just to put it out in the strategic initiatives are on top of all the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, month-to-month, year-to-year planning and executing we're doing. But it does matter if it's on the strategic initiatives or not. So I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but for example, we are not likely at the end of this 2-year period to have a significant improvement in the condition of alleys in River Falls, right? If the council thought that was a priority, amongst the other choices you have, we could have a alley strategy developed with a whole idea of how we're gonna take care of it. That doesn't mean we will ignore alleys for 2 years. It means we'll just use the limited resources we have and spray patching will be our friend and it'll be complaint based and it'll be a little at a time, but we won't make big gains. And we'll have a new library, a new fire station, new communication system for the fire. Same with sidewalk infill. This doesn't include a transportation, we're talking about safe streets, so it will include some aspects of that. Certainly we can get the federal government to help pay. But in the meantime, if we have TID redevelopments and other things, as you've seen before, we try to grab little pieces of stuff that we know is important to the community and the council as we go. But at the end of this 2-year period, we're not gonna be awash in every missed connection and sidewalk being connected and every path being redone and every key. We'll still always make progress on all of that because we've got lots of people that care doing a lot of work with a lot of resources that you provided in the operating budget. So we already have that all going. This is just like on top of all that, what else are we gonna get get done. So I think you can celebrate. This is a pretty significant amount of work. I think one of the consultants that worked with us said kind of an insane amount of work. Like, why aren't you just picking 2 things for 2 years? But we'd have a lot of unhappy staff, and we certainly would have unhappy council and unhappy community, because we've set the expectation that you're gonna get a lot of bang for your buck here, and we're gonna get going. So that's another thing to think about that's not on the list, is like alleys, some of the infill. We're gonna do some infill projects, but we're not gonna get like everything figured out on infill. And we're not gonna make as much progress on downtown as we could if we were doing a much bigger, grander, quicker, with more urgency downtown plan, which we do not have, I don't believe, the capacity to do. Because the Kinney corridor plan, if the feasibility study comes through like we think it is, we're gonna have lots of work just to kind of wrangle that. So we're very happy with what's on here. We're very sad with what's not on here. But we think them's the ropes, that's how it goes. That's how we are successful. Say no every once in a while. And the things we say yes to, we're gonna get done.
I think you guys did a good job of taking what we talked about at the, what do you call it? The retreat, and putting it into this form of what we think is important and what we don't think is important. I think that relates, it comes across really good in here. And I greatly appreciate the fact that the council and staff can do such a good job of pivoting if they have to. So if something big comes up or something better comes up, they're able to do that. So I think this is a very good strategic initiative for us. Does anybody have anything else? We can definitely cut the meeting short if we need to. Anything else on the strategic initiatives? Scott, if you have anything else, staff's got anything?
No, as long as we have a little bit of time before you adjourn, I'd just say I really appreciate the tremendous skills, passion, and execution abilities of our staff. I mean, it's world class. So we're in the position we are because you helped provide a clear vision of what you want for the community, and we've got some good people that can carry out those plans. So, and we're ready to do more.
Good. All right, I guess that's it. Thanks. We're adjourned, or however you look at it.
I wasn't. I plan on that, but I heard that you person did that, considering you and Joe
Yeah,
were
no,
tight,
I,
so.